Jake Humphrey's PSP NRL, doing a 15-minute record of this round of footy. I'm on Spreaker.com, which is a little bit unusual. However, I'm just trying out a new platform here, and I do kind of like it. I think it's a bit more user-friendly anyway for me. So we've got 15 minutes to talk about all 15 games, which is good that I've got that restriction because it allows me to kind of chop through the games and give out some of my picks and kind of talk about what I like. We don't have Jack Keppel, we don't have James Robertson this week. It's just me by myself because I've gone home for the uni holidays, so here I am, and we're going to talk about some footy. The first game is the Cronulla Sharks playing host to the Melbourne Storm. This one is a pick-em either way, $1.90. Pretty genuine price. The total is sitting at around 35.5. Reason for that small total is the playing styles of both of these teams. They both like to play defensive footy. They both like to grind. They don't give their opposition an inch. And I think more importantly, the weather. It's looking to be raining in Cronulla. And as I've just been talking, or as the afternoon's progressed, it's gone from 35 and a half down to 34 on Sportsbet anyway. For this game, I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, Cronulla, some would suggest that the Sharks have the wood over Melbourne in recent times. They went down to Melbourne and beat them 11 points to 2 in round 6. And then last year in the grand final, obviously, they pipped them in that historical fixture, the Sharks competition-winning game, and that one was also very tight as well. Needed a final try from Andrew Rafita to break the deadlock there, or rather get the win for Cronulla. So, like for this game, looking at it, and now I'm just seeing on Bet365 the total is 32.5. So I might have to look more into that total and see if we can get some kind of opportunity for maybe a middle or maybe a value play, because I'm assuming some of these bookmakers might be a little bit late on the total. For this game straight away, I'm just going to come right out and say the pick that I like for this game, and it's the pick that I'll be posting, is either team to win by 8.5 points or less. I think when you're looking at fixtures, when you're thinking about what is going to contribute to a match being close, you look at playing styles and kind of how these opposing playing styles are going to contribute to the outcome of the game. Like, for example, the Sharks and the Melbourne Storm both play very offensive brands of footy, and they're both very resilient. And when I say resilient, I mean if they concede one try, it's not going to be a case of, well, here come the floodgates, where you might say that with the West Tigers or the Newcastle Knights or the Canterbury Bulldogs, what we saw on the weekend. The Sharks are the kind of team, and Melbourne are the kind of team, if they concede a try, they're going to come back hard, they're going to come back strong. So I don't think that there's going to be a situation where there's 20 minutes at the end of the game where either one of these teams is dominating. I think it's going to be like hammer and nail all the way to the full-time siren, which means I think this game will be close. And what I'm going to do for this game is either team to win by under 8.5 points on CrownBet at $2.10 for 2 stakes. That's an official pick. So that's what I'm going to do for this game. I really like it. And I think that this game's going to be close. It's going to be low scoring. And that's what we've got for this one. So 2 stakes on that. We're going to move on now to the Manly Seagulls playing host to the Newcastle Knights. This one is at Brookvale on Friday night, 6 p.m. Manly Seagulls are a 13.5 point chalk, and the Newcastle Knights are $4.60 to win. This one's a little bit tricky from a betting perspective, just because we do have such a big line. You think about the total, well, it's pretty spot on. You think about the line, well, yes, it is pretty spot on as well. It's quite a hard one to predict, just because it is such a big line. As we talk about, I don't like laying big numbers. I don't like laying big points. And when I say laying, I mean I don't like asking the Manly Seagulls to win by 14 or more. Do I think they will? Yeah, probably. Look, they'll probably win 13 plus, and that's probably something I would lean on. But you get the feeling that the Knights might be, due for a, I hate saying the word due because I don't think it's really relevant in sports. But, over time, over the course of the season, these teams that do get drummed so many times, they're bound to come out and have a good game eventually. And I think with the Knights, they are playing quite hard. I know they were drummed last week by Melbourne, but I think in this one at Brookvale, a bit closer to home, they might keep this one a little bit closer than a lot of people expect. So I'm not too sure about this one. It's going to be a little bit tricky. From a betting perspective, we're going to leave it out. I do have a penciled-in pick for the Sharks in the Melbourne game, but as far as the rest of the games go, I'm happy to talk about it and think about what I like as I look at the markets. So for this one, Manly Seagulls versus Newcastle Knights, well, I'm going to leave it and say I'm not really sure at this point in time. The next game is the Brisbane Broncos playing host to the South Sydney Rabbitohs, where the Broncos are a 12-point favourite. The total is 42.5. Interesting thing for this game is I'm hearing a little bit of mail that Greg Inglis might be close to being back. I don't think he's back yet this week. However, he's going to be pretty close to being back. Anthony Milford returns to the halves with Benji Marshall dropping out for the Broncos. So after the Broncos got done last weekend by the Roosters, Anthony Milford will come back into the team to complement what's pretty much a full-strength lineup. And for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, they do have pretty much a full-strength team as well. I think for this one, I actually like the Rabbitohs with the points in this one. Look, obviously they didn't play very well last weekend. And I'll just have a look. I'll actually have to have a look because I'm a little bit unprepared. And I know who they're playing at the top of my head, but I've kind of forgotten it. What did the Bunnies do last year? They had a bye. That's why. And they had a bye, and then the weekend before that, they lost to the Parramatta Eels. So I think coming off a bye gives the Rabbitohs a bit of a chance to kind of talk things through, maybe iron out some creases that they had in their team structure against Parramatta, and obviously the week before that they were quite solid against the Melbourne Storm. So I think for the Rabbitohs, this 12-point line is a little bit, I think it's a little bit too big. The Broncos are a team that we know like to win close games. They've only blown out a couple of teams this year. They blew out the Tigers and they blew out the Sydney Roosters at home about 2 months ago. But generally speaking, the Broncos like to take part in these low-scoring kind of fixtures. I think the Rabbitohs have the forward pack, and I think they have the talent across the board to mix it with them. I don't think it's going to be easy for the Rabbitohs to get up for this game, and I think a line of 12 is something that the Rabbitohs are going to be able to cover. So I think for this one, I like the Rabbitohs with the plus 12 points. I won't quote a stake on it yet. The only thing I'm going to quote a stake on is the first one, but this is just a little podcast to kind of clear my head and let you guys what I'm thinking early on. So the Rabbitohs plus 12 points is something I definitely like, and the either team by 8.5 or less in the Cronulla Sharks Melbourne Storm game is something I like as well. Now moving on, we've got the Gold Coast Titans playing host to the New Zealand Warriors, where the total is 43.5 and the Titans are a 2.5-point favourite. I know for a fact that the Warriors do travel very well to this venue. In fact, I remember last year when Jarryd Hayne came into the Titans team and there was a whole lot of buzz about the Gold Coast Titans. The Warriors just came through and they took them apart. It's just a place they like to play, and I think if you look at the meetings over time, which I'll do right now, Warriors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So back to 2011, they've won 5 in a row, and who knows how many they won before that. Which means, based on history, and based on the time of the season that it is, and when I say time of the season, this is the Warriors' time where they do tend to play a bit better. I know the Titans have Jarryd Hayne back at fullback, and they've got Connie Hurrell in there, and they've got Pete C and Ryan James. So they have a good-looking team. The Warriors are very hard to trust, I would say, at the best of times, but right now they're kind of plateauing a little bit. Like, I don't really know what the Warriors are doing in terms of like direction on the season. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen with the Warriors, but I do know they need to win sooner rather than later, as do the Titans. Both of these teams are on 10 points with only 5 points worth of for and against separating the two of them. So at this point in the season, one may consider this game a must-win for either one of these teams. I think I would probably give the edge to the Warriors. However, there's not going to be a pick coming from me, but I would give the edge to the Warriors, and I'd probably just take the head-to-head for them to win at $2.18. Moving on to the Penrith Panthers playing host to the Canberra Raiders. It's going to be a cold Saturday afternoon in Bathurst out there, where these two guys play each other at Carrington Park. A bit of history about this fixture. These two teams played each other there last year, and I think the Panthers won a close one, if my memory serves me correctly. The thing that jumps out to me about this game isn't either side, because I don't really want to play either one of these sides to win, because the Raiders do have so much talent that you never know what they're going to do. And as for the Panthers, they appear to be back into a rhythm. The Raiders are missing Shannon Boyd, who is one of their better front rowers, and he's going to be a difficult out for them, with Isaiah Soliola coming in to replace him in the front row, which is an interesting replacement given the fact that guy generally has a bit of a back row, or even maybe earlier in his career, a centre vibe about him, but he is going to be playing in the front row for this one. The thing that jumps out to me about this game is the total. I think 42.5 is a little bit too high. I'm not too sure about the weather in Bathurst on Saturday night, but I can tell you without looking, I live in Bathurst now, I can tell you without looking it's going to be chilly, and that whether that contributes to the point scoring output, I'm not too sure, but I would say that if it's going to be cold. Look, we've even got showers forecasted for Bathurst on Saturday, and from 5 p.m. it is scheduled to rain. So I do really think it's a good idea to snag this total. I think the Panthers have obviously improved their attitude improvements, both defensive improvements as well. And the Canberra Raiders, look, they can leak points here and there, but generally speaking, they play a pretty tough defensive brand of footy. I think from the outset, this one's going to be quite close, especially if it's raining, and especially if it's cold. I think both of these teams are going to be maybe coming out of their shell in the first 10 to 15 minutes, and I think that will set the platform for quite a low-scoring game. So that's one of my favourite bets of the week. Just looking at it right now, I do quite like the Raiders and Panthers under total points there. Now, moving on quickly, I'm getting at my fifth game of the week. It is the Parramatta Eels hosting the North Queensland Cowboys. And if I can quickly tell you something about the North Queensland Cowboys, it is that Jonathan Thurston is on the 19th. He's the 19th man in the reserve. So does that tell me he's going to play? Well, maybe it will. However, with Jonathan Thurston in the team, I still think it's going to be a big ask to take out the Eels. Now, in comes Jonathan Thurston, but also in comes Corey Norman. I lean on the Parramatta Eels in this game. They're playing in Sydney. They've already beaten the North Queensland Cowboys once this season up in Townsville. They smacked them. I don't know if Jonathan Thurston's going to play. I don't know if Corey Norman's going to play. But assuming both of those guys are out, I like the Eels, and assuming both of those guys are in, well, I potentially like the Eels as well. Who's to say that the Cowboys and Jonathan Thurston, who's to say that Jonathan Thurston is going to be able to come back and get right back into a rhythm? You can catch the Eels with 1.5 points now, $2 odds as an underdog. I think it's a good bet. I think it's interesting that they're underdogs in this one. And the Eels are most definitely a team that I would take in this fixture. Backtracking. Sharks, Storm, either team 8.5 or less. Tick. Rabbitohs plus 12. Tick. Raiders, Panthers, under 42.5 tick, and my leans so far, I've got nothing on the Knights game, but I kind of like the Warriors a little bit, and for this one, I kind of like the Eels, however, I won't be releasing a play. Second last game of the weekend, we have the West Tigers playing host to the Sydney Roosters, where the Tigers are a 12-point favourite, and the Sydney Roosters, obviously, being asked to lay 12. The total is 44.5, and the lineups for this game as follows. Not too many differences from either team. However, Chris Lawrence is out for the Titans, which will make it a little bit difficult, and obviously Mitchell Pearce is back in for the Roosters, which is going to bolster their ability just to play footy in general. 12-point line is fairly accurate, and I would say it's probably one that the Roosters will cover. However, the Tigers did dig quite deep last weekend. So it's interesting for me, the line in this one, but I'm not going to touch on either side, to be honest with you. I think the total of 44.5 is a little bit high, and the reason it is that high is because it's a higher line. So with a higher line generally comes a high total, and the reason I say that is because if one team is expected to win by a large amount, then it's the general consensus that the points are going to get up quite high as well, because that makes sense, right? If the Roosters are expected to win by 12, well, they might have to score 25, 26, 27 points to get there. So that would leave a pretty high total set, and that's what we've got. We've got a 44.5 point total. However, if the Tigers knuckle down and have the right attitude, it may not get there. So I guess that would be my only lean from that game. And to close out the week, I've been speaking like an auctioneer for this entire podcast. However, I will slow things down. Deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. I've got 3 minutes and 50 seconds left to talk to you about why I think the Bulldogs will cover 6 points against the Dragons. Look, it's a dangerous thing in betting or in sports tipping to go out and take a team that has been so horrible against a team that has been quite good. And generally speaking, in the past for me, this has worked out pretty 50-50. If I'd sack up and take a team that's been playing poorly against the number with the plus points, they'll come out and they'll get blown out, or they come out and they have an inspiring performance. I think we're going to see the latter with the Bulldogs this week. I heard on the NRL 360, or maybe it was the Matty John show, that the Bulldogs, they didn't train on Monday, they skipped the film session. The boys went out and had lunch, they had some beers, they talked about it, they had an honesty session. And look, I'm not sure how far I'm looking into that, but I guess what I'm saying generally is anybody who watches sports knows that the bounce back factor is real. If a team gets drummed up one week, they are, in my opinion, more likely to come out and play some inspired footy the week after. And we've got the Bulldogs here in a game against the Dragons. And I think the reason why I like the Bulldogs in this game isn't just because I think they'll be motivated to play good after being slandered by the media and their fans and everyone, basically. Look, the Bulldogs have a very good record against the Dragons, okay? The Bulldogs have won something like 9 out of their last 10, including 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row over the Dragons. So it's a team they know how to beat. Another reason I like the 6-point handicap in this game is because it's going to be low scoring. Both of these teams can defend quite well, and the attack for both of these teams have been called into question. Obviously, the Dragons have been better this year, but I still think the Bulldogs, generally speaking, are quite good defensively. So for mine, with Josh Reynolds on the extended bench, actually, where have we got Josh Reynolds? Josh Reynolds is starting. James Graham is starting. Okay, Brett Morris is back in the team. Branko Lee isn't starting. He's on the reserves, and he has been probably their most promising-looking attacking weapon. I think that his potential exit is going to be substituted well by Brett Morris and Josh Reynolds coming in, rather. So for me, I think that the Bulldogs, not only are they going to win this game out, not only are they going to cover the 6 points, I think they might win this game outright. It's a situation where they come back, they get smashed, they play the Dragons, who were a little bit lethargic last week against the Tigers, and maybe it's time for the Dragons to get a bit of a smack in the face and think, hey, maybe, I just think if you catch my drift, I think the Bulldogs will come out and they will win this game and they will cover. But I think the biggest point I'm trying to make in this game is 6 points is a lot of points when you're playing against a team and you're playing in a fixture that may be quite low scoring. So I think when you're catching 6 points, this could be a 14-10 type job or a 20-24 type job. So I think, look, not only do I think the Bulldogs, yes, I think the Bulldogs will cover. I think they will also win the match, but I'll err on the side of caution. I'll take the +6, but I may even take them to win the game as well. I think this is the perfect storm, and I think the cards have aligned for a Bulldogs win. We've got a minute left. I'm going to backtrack through what I like. I like either team by 8.5 or less in the Sharks Storm. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, grinding encounter. It's in the weather conditions. It's going to be raining in Cronulla. It's going to be windy. Both these teams are going to get at it. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Skipping forward to the second game on Friday, I like the South Sydney Rabbitohs catching 12 points against the Brisbane Broncos. Be sure not to take it if it drops below 12, but 12 2-converted tries is a nice amount of points there for a team that's coming off the bye against a team that may be starting to get a little bit fatigued. For the second game on Saturday, I like the Penrith Panthers and the Canberra Raiders under 42.5 points. It's going to be cold in Bathurst. It might be raining. I don't think the bookies have caught on to that yet. I think this total is probably about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 points too high. I think it's going to be a grind. And then the last game of the week, I like the Canterbury Bulldogs to silence the critics in a low-scoring game, catching 6. I love it. I think they'll win outright. That's what I like. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 picks, and we could potentially have more. However, stay tuned. I'll be posting the picks in the group. The two things I've locked in so far, Bulldogs and the Tribe at 8.5 for Cronulla. Keep an eye out for my write-up and any other videos. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the footy.